welcome, guys.
Hey,
Hi.
good to see you all again.
As always, we're talking with Tom and Jim. Tom Goldrup, Jim Goldrup up there in the square. That's our purpose here. Film historians, world travelers, full of some of the craziest stories I've ever heard. And that's what we're here for, to learn more about that, whatever that is. So welcome, guys. On my off to the side of me, whatever way it comes out, is this idiot, Dan Dye. I kid, but Daniel Dye, who's filling in for Matthew Rose as a host on the show still. And Dan, thank you for being here and filling Matthew.
Yeah, no problem. I'll let him out of the cupboard I stuffed him in at some point.
I was going to say filling his shoes, which is really difficult because they're usually filled with peanut butter. But Tom, Jim, oh, go ahead. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Matthew's going to end up disappearing like Duffy did.
Yes, yes. So we'll have episodes where I wonder where Matthew is right now, and we'll clip to him doing something crazy, like inventing flubber or something.
Well,
but anyway, welcome to the show, guys. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you doing today? It was a nice day out. Anything new happening for you?
I can hear because I got my hearing aids.
Woo! Yay!
I'll say that shouted a little less loud.
Yay! Don't burst the hearing.
Some deer came on the property.
Yeah, some deer came on the property and were eating grass down below our place. And
does that happen often?
No,
not for years.
Not for years.
Oh wow!
There's three dogs on the property, so I can't. They don't.
Oh, scare the deer away. Yeah, that makes sense. Wow.
3 young bucks. They had the antlers beginning growing.
Starting.
Oh, and the dogs left them alone?
Yeah, they didn't know they were there, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Well, that's neat. That is neat. That's pretty neat.
18 years old and deaf anyway, so he wouldn't have known. She wouldn't have known.
I was at a house just down the street in the same town that you're in, and drove up to the house, and there was a fox sitting on one of the steps. Like, that's really cool. I'm not getting out of my car.
Seen a fox once here.
Yeah, saw one
years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
See a lot of turkeys though, and they love staying in the middle of the road.
Yeah, they love being in the road. Yeah. So, guys, I have a quick question for you. We've talked about this, but I know none of the details. I just know that it happened. So I was wondering if you could, to start off tonight, if you could talk about seeing the Doors in concert. You mentioned that, where it was, what it was, time period, etc. And we can just go from there on that.
Okay.
That's Tom.
Yeah, Jim was in Australia at the time, so he missed out on it. He saw the loved ones down there instead.
And the Easy Beats.
Yeah, 1967, the Summer of Love. The Doors came to Mount Tamalpais in Marin County, up north of San Francisco a bit. And Ray and Marilee, Ray, my brother, and Marilee, my sister-in-law, and we went up there to watch, and we watched Jim Morrison and the Doors perform. So the grassroots were there too, I think. But the main thing I remember, and I wasn't stoned either. It's before I got stoned. But anyway,
so you got stoned after the concert? No, I'm just
no, it was before I ever smoked a joint. But the main thing I remember is Jim Morrison. They're on the stage, holding on to the microphone like he was holding on to it to help keep him standing up. But it was great. And that's right when they were just getting popular. I mean, Light My Fire, which was their first big hit, that was the current hit on the radio. So it was in the earlier part of their career, as far as after, I won't say earlier part of the career. I'm not telling how many years they played in garages and little places in LA or not before they got the big record, but it was neat. And it was enjoyable. And Mount Tamalpais always was a special place for us. We'd play up there. We filmed part of a film up there. And we used to hang out up on Mount Tamalpais in our Marin County days before we went to LA. But yeah. Was it really packed? Were they were known? The only way you were allowed to go there is you had to meet down at the Civic Center down by San Rafael and get in buses, and the buses would drive you up. And yeah, there were a lot of people there. Mostly long hairs, and the hippies. and yeah, but yeah,
I watched a short. I want to say it was a short documentary on the Doors, and when you mentioned him holding onto the microphone, that was really it brought me back to that documentary because the band was very experimental and improvisational, is my understanding. And I don't remember who the guitarist is, but he was he was very improvisational during the songs, and he mentioned, or they talked about in that, how they would actually use the music to prop Jim Morrison up because it's sometimes he would be so drugged out or so out of it that he would kind of lose where he was or whatever, and they'd actually change up the music or pump it up full of energy to get him on his feet again. So when you say he was holding onto the microphone, there's actually this one scene where you see him kind of stumbling and falling to the ground, and the music revs up, and he is almost just pulled back to the microphone by the music. So
yeah, they in their music, a lot of times they have really long instrumental parts in between, and Jim Morrison was quite a poet,
yep.
and they were good. Ray Nazarick or Mazarick, I don't know if he was the pianist or the guitar player. I forget the other one's name. But yeah, it's one of the concerts I really remember good.
And 30 years later, they had a Summer of Love reunion up in Golden Gate Park, and they had the Doors were there, but
no,
a lot of the old people were there.
A lot of the old people were there. A lot of the old groups.
Yeah, they were also interesting for that the organ playing because they didn't have a bass player, and so they used the organ for bass.
The organ was really good.
Yeah, and so it gave it this. They were talking about this kind of almost like circus sound to it because it was
original.
using the.
They were original. Yeah. It wasn't like all the rest of the groups back then. They were good.
Yeah.
Well, that was the era of the guitar first hitting the mainstream, really. I mean, I guess the 50s, right? The 50s.
The 50s,
and with the British invasion, it was all guitar groups, and then the Doors were just completely different. They were something else.
Well, yeah, you talk about being a poet. Yeah.
Yeah, my brother Bill, my oldest brother, he was really good at the guitar. When we were kids, we could be 2 blocks down the road. He's out. He's in the garage with the garage door open with the amplifiers playing a guitar. And you can hear him. And he ended up doing a lot of music. He ended up his group opened up for Chuck Berry at the Oakland Coliseum. And
Bobby Darin.
He backed up Bobby Darin.
Yeah.
But he was really he's one of my favorite guitarists. My brother. He was very talented. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Now you mentioned that when you were seeing the Doors, Jim, you were in Australia. And Tom spit out the bands, but I don't remember who are you mentioned a couple bands, Australian bands.
The Loved Ones, yeah,
the Loved Ones.
About Jerry Humphreys.
I was friends with the lead singer. He lived across the street from me for a while, and
they were the top group at that time in Australia, right?
One of the top groups. The Mamas and the Papas were going to try to get them to come over here, but at that time they were just beginning to break up. But yeah, I saw the Loved Ones, the Easy Beats, that one of the records made it over here.
Yeah, I got Friday on my mind. And one of the members of the band of Loved Ones, they were Australians, or Jerry was Humphreys, the lead singer. I think he was from England, yeah. But one was from Ogden, Utah. So.
Wow. Yeah. It's funny because every now and then, Jim, you've mentioned some music from Australia to me, and I've kind of looked them up or tried to find something on YouTube, and it's there, and it's very cool. And the U.S. we never heard them, right? Like for the most part. And the ones in the '60s, the beat bands, of that era in Australia were really, really good. And I'm like, oh, now there's a whole little, I've seen a crack, and now there's a whole world of '60s Australian music that we could listen to, that has been preserved, but not necessarily people don't know. And that's why I kind of wanted to know about the band names and who, because I personally I want to go find these bands.
The Master
Apprentices.
Yeah, they were another
one. I forget most of them.
Yeah, it's amazing how accessible content content is now. Because yeah,
Right.
I'm having a similar experience, but with like 90s Britpop rock, where I'll find this band and I'll listen to it and I'll be like, oh man, this is the most amazing thing ever. I wonder what this band is. And it's like, this band broke up in the late 1990s. It's like, again. But it's amazing how accessible it is. And that's kind of interesting about the distribution too, about like you have these great artists and bands that don't get seen
Yeah,
or
right. Yep,
heard.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, we had some friends here in San Lorenzo Valley. They had a group called the Lost Dogs.
the Lost Dogs.
The Lost Dogs, and they were really top notch. Really a top notch group. They're no longer together either. But and then I think really of the real famous bands of the '60s, the one that surprisingly stuck together all these years and never broke up was the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. Yep.
So Jim, going back to the Australia connection, so you saw these bands like in the '60s. I'm assuming in concert halls or clubs, or and I'm curious how that was different from an experience of going in the U.S. Like if you were going to go see, a band in Australia on a Saturday night, what would be different than seeing them on, in San Francisco?
You have to fly to it.
Thanks.
I'm kidding.
It was kind of the same. Like us, we went to the Straight Theater on Hay Street. There wasn't much different. You go there, listen to the groups perform.
Did they have all the light shows and everything like that?
No, they didn't.
Okay.
Not the ones I went to anyway.
Yeah.
It is kind of interesting how you can be in some place that's completely different and have the experience be so similar, even though they're theoretically very disconnected.
Yeah.
There were little clubs, like one club was called the Trip. And
But you didn't go to any place like the Fillmore or
no.
They were smaller.
In fact, Jerry Humphreys, the loved ones, he told me that, he doesn't use drugs. His drug is orange juice.